I hear foretellings of a war that is brewing across the continent. Barbarians roam the world, leaving only devastation in their wake. Walls crumble, civilizations are swept away by waves of invaders. Armies march to war, destruction is near. There is only one civilization that remains to stop this. I was born in the year 449, child to a lone villager. We lived a humble life in the far stretches of the world, untouched by civilization, a wasteland. There was no food in sight, nor was there water, but then again, where was truly safer than here? Away from all the people, away from the wars and death, in the crumbling remains of civilizations. What was my name? What was my purpose? I did not know, but I was determined to find out. In my search for purpose, I met my first companions, all eager to explore the world with me. I do not doubt that our leader cared for us. In fact, I think he did his best to provide a good life for everyone in the civilization, but we could not stay here. I felt that I had a greater destiny in store than to sit around in the sands of the desert my whole life. Our leader did not understand it. He was set on creating a peaceful place for us all to call home, but the open world called for me, and I answered. I set off with my companions on an adventure in the year 455, being only 6 years old. Epic Boy _Sam led our group as we marched off into the wilderness in search of a purpose in the world. On our march through the wild, we encountered an albino giant from a different civilization. He attacked us before we could even exchange greetings, striking at one of our members with a spear. The group was startled, but we could tell that he was scared. After a moment of tension, he backed down, but there was something special about this giant, something different about him. We could see it. Our group worshipped him as our god. We danced around him to show our devotion. He accepted us and joined our group. As we continued our march, we came across the first signs of civilization. A small village by a river. We decided that we would greet the inhabitants and make our rest here before continuing our journey. As we entered the village, something felt off. Houses, signs, roads, all still perfectly intact. Yet there was nobody in the village. Not a single soul was left. The only thing that filled the roads and houses was the empty air. It was as if these people had just vanished. Perhaps these people had just packed up and left one day, but something told me that there was more. Something had wiped these people out, a powerful force of destruction ravaging through the world. There was an ominous air of death and decay lingering in this village. We cautiously roamed the streets, looking for any loot to scavenge. However, as we spent more time in this village, something snapped. One of our members of the group lashed out and attacked another member, savagely beating him with a club. The group was sent into a sudden panic. I jumped to intervene without hesitation, but I was nearly killed in the process. I handed my weapon off to Sam as I retreated from the fight. Unfortunately, we had no choice but to kill him. He fought to the bitter end, but was slain in the streets. It was at this moment that I began to understand that there was something wrong with this world. I watched as violence had led to the death of one of our members of the group, and I thought about how it must have been the end of these people as well. I now understood why my father preferred to live in the solitude of the empty desert. I began to doubt myself in my journey. I especially doubted the cohesion of our group after such an incident. How long until another person lashes out? How long before the next death? We could have turned around, but we didn't. We kept our determination to press onwards, even in the wake of death. As the sun set and day turned to night, we saw a barbarian fighting someone in the distance. As we approached, some of our group demanded that we kill the barbarian as a sign to other barbarians. There were others in the group who pleaded to spare him. I was split. Only a moment ago we had witnessed the destruction brought on by barbarians. What could this one do to our group? After some hesitation, I agreed to let the barbarian join us on our journey, deciding that it should be our goal to bring peace to the world and not more death. There were people in the group who kept their eyes fixed on this barbarian who was killing someone just a moment before. It made no sense for any of us to trust this barbarian. After all, they were the ones responsible for the destruction of civilizations. And yet, even if cautiously, we came to accept him into our group as one of our own. Our group came to the edge of another settlement. Everyone was on edge. Eyes darted back and forth, usually landing on the sole barbarian of the group. People were not quick to forget or forgive the crimes of the barbarians. As we walked towards the city, we saw white buildings of marble, and towers climbing high above everything. This was a big city, and we expected a warm welcome from the inhabitants, but as we entered the city, we were only greeted by the coldness of the empty streets. I felt uneasy yet again. It was the same as the last settlement, and it was so quiet. There were still wagons left vacant in the streets, houses and roads left perfectly intact, doors were left open. We looked at some of the writings, and it made me sad. It is better to suffer in righteousness than to prosper in wickedness, for no wealth is worth wicked deeds. Scott of Scotland, year 409. We left the corpse of yet another dead civilization behind us as we continued into the wilderness of the world. We walked through the open territory until we came to a small camp with a hut and a campfire. There were multiple graves outside of the hut, almost as a reminder of the crushing force of time. All of the people and civilizations that were lost over the years. How long does anything really last? We rested and recovered here and prepared to continue our journey towards civilization. We crossed over a river and continued through a valley. There was a large cliff to our left. I noted the walls placed on top of the mountain. People had lived here once. As we passed through the rocky terrain, a sense of uneasiness swept through the group. It was different from last time, though. This time it felt like we were being watched. I turned around and then I saw it. For once we were not alone. And this was not an abandoned civilization. They had been watching us from their mountain keep. Some of the group were startled and wanted to run, but I was determined to make peace with these people. I greeted them from the ground in the hopes that we could stay at their mountain keep for just a while. They only stood there, unresponding, unmoving. Beginning to feel nervous, I turned around and began going away with the rest of the group. But that is when they attacked. All of them leapt down from their mountain and chased us. There was no way for me to escape. I was far too slow. I felt a rush of adrenaline, but I knew I would die, and I accepted it even as I ran away. But then, something most unexpected happened.
Only you can make all this world seem right. Only you
The barbarians split off from the group, running towards our assailants, weapon drawn. For a moment I looked back. I knew I could never give him the thanks he deserved, but I didn't need to. He fought bravely to the end to give us a chance to escape. Perhaps we had judged him too harshly before for being a barbarian.
I'll never forget that barbarian, dude. He literally jumped in just to save us.
The only good barbarian in existence. He proved to us that there was still good in the world, and that good can come from even the most unexpected of places. Rest in peace, water_melon 12760. Even with the sacrifice of our barbarian friend, we still had no time to mourn, as we continued running from the enemies who were chasing us. As we ran, we came into the middle of a large battle happening between a band of barbarians and the mighty empire of Saria. They had completely destroyed and routed the barbarian army, and all that the barbarians could do was flee. We joined Saria, seeing that they were the last bastion of good in the world. They happily accepted us as we joined their ranks. I finally felt that me and my group had found a purpose. Something that the Sarians had failed to account for, however, is the ferocity of fleeing barbarians. We soon found out that these fleeing barbarians were not fleeing at all. They launched a swift counterattack and killed some of the weaker members of the civilization. We were sent into a panic as the Sarian warriors rushed to protect us. Somehow, in the chaos, our god died, slain by barbarians in the midst of a battle that was not his. I felt for a moment that we were now worse off than ever. We had just lost 2 members of our group that had traveled so far with us. Our morale was destroyed. The barbarians were once again driven back. We gathered loot and put it into our wagon, but there was no amount of loot that would overcome the loss of 2 great members of our group. Fog covered the landscape in the aftermath of the battle. From the fog, something hit me, setting our entire group into a moment of panic. As I turned around, I saw that it was Please Roblox 67. He was friendly towards us. We spoke briefly, and then I asked him to lead us towards civilization. As we walked away from the battlefield, I felt a sense of hope in the wake of Saria driving away the barbarian horde. I envisioned a world where people could roam the land freely without fear of death. A good world where no one would die of war or starvation. We walked through the vast desert. There was no food or water, so far as we could see. We began to run short on rations as our people got close to starvation. Even nature itself seemed to be hostile. People began to question if we were lost, but I held no doubt in my mind that we would find our way back. I had traveled the world and I had seen almost everything except civilization. I was ready to settle down in a city with high walls. I was ready to find a house so that I could live the rest of my days in comfort and peace. And sure enough, as the fog cleared, we could finally see civilization on the horizon. At last, real civilization, a place where people walked the streets, talked, ate, and traded. At last, I found a place where my people could be safe. But even with this victory, it still felt wrong. I thought about it, and then I realized how much we had lost to get here. We sat in comfort behind our walls, but we had lost so much in the process. I couldn't shake this feeling. This should have been a happy moment, but instead of thinking about what we had, I let my mind be taken over by what we didn't have. We even lost our own god on the way to civilization. No amount of people walking the streets, no amount of bread in my stomach could fill the void that was left from these losses. It all felt empty. Even worse, a madness had followed us, almost like a plague. People were fighting each other outside of the walls, stealing loot. Brothers attacked brothers. I saw the very thing I sought, decaying at my arrival. But in this moment I found something I never expected. The reincarnation of our god. Somehow in this place, he had been born anew. We were drawn to him and looked for guidance. He blessed us with hope, and I accepted it. I now felt that the future was brighter than ever. Perhaps Saria would grow to be larger than it ever was. Perhaps good would truly be restored to the world. Perhaps the empty husks of dead civilizations would attract new hosts. Perhaps new civilizations would be built from the ashes of old. I settled down to enjoy the peace of the renewed world. Food was plentiful, I made myself bread to eat, but comfort was something that I was cursed to never enjoy for long. I was suddenly attacked by someone dressed in blue. I tried to escape, but I was killed. It all faded away in an instant as my body hit the ground. But my story does not end there. Hope is not so easily stomped out. Suddenly, everything came back to me. I was confused and I had lost everything. It all happened so fast. And then I heard it. The sound of marching. A war band was headed towards the city, and they were ready to pillage. Barbarians flooded the outskirts of the town and crashed against the walls like a strong wave. Me and Please Roblox 67 retreated deeper into the city, but we realized that there was no escape. The walls, the very things that were supposed to protect us, were now serving to seal us into one large death trap. Barbarians would be flooding into the city before long, and hiding would not be an option. We found a place where we could scale the walls and we made our escape, leaving the great empire of Saria to its fate. The leader pleaded with his people to close the gates in a desperate attempt to survive the barbarian horde. Me and Please Roblox 67 found refuge in a small ghost town. It was the remains of Francia, an ancient place that had existed from almost the very start of the server. I read about their great king, Alex, and about his deeds. He sounded like a great leader that built a great life for his people. His grave lay next to the sign, still untouched, still with flowers right beside it, unwilting. These flowers reminded me of my group, and the world as a whole. Even though we had lost so many people, even though the world was decaying around us, we survived, unwilting in the face of everything. I explored the remains of the civilization. I wondered what killed these people. I wondered what the streets of this place may have looked like when it was at its peak. I wondered if Saria would soon share the same fate. The battle raged on in the city, and I thought about all the abandoned civilizations we had come across. Every empty city, every ghost town dotting the map. How had they gone out? Some may have gone out with glory, fighting in one large final battle against the invaders. Others may have quietly declined to a point where they could never recover. I thought about my dad, from all those years ago. I wondered what he was doing, what he had created. There were too many barbarians. Victory for Saria seemed impossible. It felt like there was a dark cloud casting over the world, a dark age being ushered in, right in front of my very eyes. I was watching the death of a great civilization. I was witnessing the death of the last civilization. I knew that this would be the end of everything if the barbarians won. The Saurians charged at the barbarians in one final desperate attempt to save what was left of the civilized world. Perhaps humanity was never meant to reach this far. Perhaps civilization was never meant to be. Countries, empires, cities, maybe these things were never in our fate to begin with. Perhaps humanity will be doomed to be split apart forever by warring tribes, fighting over scraps of nothing. But Saria would not fall on this day. As the sun set, something strange happened. Saria was pushing the barbarians back. Even more than that, they were winning. The barbarians were sent into a desperate retreat. Saurian warriors chased them down. Civilization had been saved. We celebrated knowing that on this day, civilization would not crumble. I walked the streets of the city and drank water from the lake. At last I felt safe. In the aftermath of the battle, the Saurians and the barbarians came together to make peace. We all stood beside each other as brothers. For once, it felt like the world could be at peace. But what became of our group in the aftermath? Where did we go? What did we do? Epic Boy _Sam was lost in the fight against the barbarians, heroically giving his life to protect the last bastion of civilization. Our god was proclaimed protector of Saria and would defend the defenseless for years to come. Please Roblox 67 and the other remaining members of the group settled down for a peaceful life in Saria. But what about me? What did I do? In the aftermath of the battle, I watched as the group that had traveled the world with me disbanded, as people all went their separate ways, starting their new lives in the safety of the new world. But I could never find true satisfaction with the quiet life of the city, and so I set off again, into the wild, to explore more of the world. As the gates of Saria shut behind me, I thought about what I might see on my journey. And that was the end of my story in Civilization survival game. A story of friendship, exploration, a search for hope, war, and peace.